Service Commission. Thank you for being present today and participating in this virtual conference related to docket numbers 2024-27WS and 2024-28WS. Docket number 2024-27-WS is the joint application to establish water and sewer service areas and rates and charges in portions of Lexington County. Give me 1 second. And for approval of the sale of utility system from AGC Silver Lake LLC to CSWR South Carolina Utility Operating Company LLC. Docket number 2024-28S relates to the application to establish sewer service area and rates and charges in portions of Greenville County and for approval of the sale of utility system from Lookup Forest Homes Association Incorporated to CSWR South Carolina Utility Operating Company LLC. Okay. Also joining me in the hearing room today include Staff Attorney Sandra Moser, Professional Engineer Lance Holt, CPA John Powers, Live Stream Producer Melissa Purvis, and WebEx Extraordinaire Gwen Richardson. That's everybody. All right. So now I will ask who's appearing on behalf of the parties in docket numbers 2024-27WS and 2024-28S. So beginning with 2024-27WS, may I ask who is participating today on behalf of Central States Water Resources Incorporated?
Ms. Boyd, Jack Pringle on behalf of the applicants in both 27 and 28.
Thank you, Mr. Pringle. All right, moving on to the interveners. South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs.
Hey, good morning, Jocelyn. It's Roger Hall for the department. And I will note, I meant to double check. I don't think we have actually intervened yet in either of these dockets, but we do, at this point, we are planning to.
Okay.
But just did want to note that for the record.
Thank you. And do you have your colleague with you today, Mr. Hall?
Yes, I'm sorry. Jake Edwards, another attorney with the department, is also.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Hall and Mr. Edwards. South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff.
Good morning, Joshua Alston with Ms. Lenice Mitchell on behalf of ORS today in both dockets.
Okay, wonderful. And Mr. Hall, I don't think I asked you this question. You would be, in the foreseeable future, be intervening in 28 also, docket 2024-28S on behalf of?
That is our intention.
Okay.
I don't want to get into too much. We've been I've talked to Jack a couple of times, or kind of, looking at it and seeing what role we have or don't. So
okay,
it's my intention right now, but it's not 100%, I guess.
All right, I understand. So everyone, those are all the parties or potential parties that I have listed in DMS. I think I've referenced everyone. So the purpose of this morning's conference is to, first of all, I know that you've recognized that these dockets are on the commissioner's agenda for this Thursday, and they relate to the waivers that appear in Commission Regulations 103-512.4B and 103-712.4B. And based on I want to reference the authority that's in one of the statutory references in the pleadings, the application 58-5-240. So under that statute, the commission, as it continues to review the application, would need to review its regulations related to rate applications in both the 500 series or Article 5 related to wastewater utilities, and then Article 7 related to water utilities. So the purpose for these items appearing on Thursday's agenda is for the commissioners to consider the next steps in processing this application. And if you have feedback that you would like to provide this morning so that the commissioners can determine whether the waivers should be granted, and if they are, moving forward with processing the notice, that's the purpose for the items being on the agenda, for continued processing and the commissioner's acceptance or not acceptance of the application. They have to consider the request for the waivers. So, Mr. Pringle, you filed on behalf of your client for the waivers. If you don't mind, I'd like to come to you, refer to you last, because I think you've stated what you wanted to state in the application as for the basis for requesting the waivers. Ms. Mitchell or Mr. Austin, may I come to you first, please?
Sure.
All right. And do you understand, did I explain why the issues are on, those issues are on the, well, I see the motion for confidential treatment, but the purpose was to talk about the waivers, the request for waivers related to processing these applications.
Sure. And so from ORS's perspective, I don't think we have a problem with continuing to process the applications. It's just whether or not we're on the merits going to grant any waivers or not. ORS is not at a position where it can agree to the waiver requests at this time. And it may be that without some of those documents that are being sought to be waived, ORS may not be able to agree that it is prudent to grant the applications as we get to the merits.
Okay, so Mr. Austin, you're saying right now you don't have a problem with the commission considering the request for the waivers? I want to make sure I understood you correctly. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So ORS at this time does not think it prudent for the commission to grant the waivers.
Okay.
Can we clarify for a second? If I know you said you were going to come to me last, and I if you don't want me to talk right now, I won't. But can I keep talking, or do you want me to just wait until you've heard?
Well,
from
yeah,
Consumer Affairs?
because there were several waivers that the applicant requested, and all I'm referring to is the waivers. Certain waivers must be, I'm sorry, certain documents should be included in rate applications under Articles 5 and 7. So, Mr. Austin, are you referring to the applicant's request for waiver to file those documents with the application, or are you talking on a broader scale, the other waivers that were requested in the application?
So I guess I'm talking on a more broader scale. If the documents are filed at a later date before we get to the merits, and not necessarily at the same time the application is accepted, ORS is probably okay with that. We just don't want it to be an overall waiver to where there is no need going forward for any of the various documents. I think I've got engineering plans and specifications certified by the PE registered in South Carolina, DHEC construction permit, statement of engineer, letter from DHEC, financial statement indicating proposed investment by plant category, and a depreciation schedule as some of the waivers that we've been looking at.
Yes, sir. Okay, I understand what you're saying. So at this time, you're not, you said if the documents are filed at a later date, ORS, if the ORS may be fine with the commission continuing to process the application and issuing the notice of filing and public hearing.
Correct. And I guess just to round out those waiver requests, I believe Mr. Pringle's applications requested a waiver of a formal hearing. ORS would also oppose that, as we intend to file testimony in these documents.
Okay. Mr. Pringle, I wasn't trying to, I thought I understood what Mr. Austin was saying, but I just, that's why I wanted to come to you last. I know there are other waivers, and I can say this to the parties, and Mr. Powers, you can confirm this for me. For example, the request for waiver of the bond, we have copies of CSWR's bond on file here. But it's we're at the initial stage, right? So staff, when we receive these applications, rate applications, we look through the applications to see if if the content of the applications comply with the regulations. And if someone asks for a waiver, staff cannot grant the waiver, of course. that issue, if the content of the application does not include all of the information in, for example, 512-4B, staff has to staff can receive it and then say, commissioners, we need you to make a decision regarding the request for waivers, because staff cannot, of course, grant a request for a waiver of a commission's regulations. Hence the reason we are here today. So ORS's position right now, it may change, but right now, Mr. Austin, ORS has basically stated that the documents that Mr. Pringle has requested a waiver of that are contained in 512-4B or 712-4B as it relates to the two dockets, if those documents are filed at a later time, ORS does not have an issue with the request for the waivers. However, ORS is of the opinion that the commission needs to schedule and hold a hearing in these two dockets. Did I correctly state your position?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And sorry, that's not to say that eventually we couldn't be in a place where we could agree on a few of these. It's just at this early juncture, we think it inappropriate to have a waiver on the merits of whether or not some of those documents are applicable, if that makes sense.
And Mr. Austin, may I ask you something?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you do you have an idea, just in case we're asked, do you have an idea as to when, let's say the commission says, okay, staff move forward, the processing of this application is conditioned upon the applicant filing these documents or whatever the parties agree to by X date. Do you have a date in mind?
I do not. You know, one of our comments we had, if you read the applications, it's unclear whether or not the applicants have sought these documents from DHEC. Some of them they note that DHEC has. You know, we would recommend trying to do that if possible. And I would defer to Mr. Pringle on how long he might think it might take to receive something, if it's even something that they can get, understanding that some of this is quite old. But you know, it strikes me, if we're talking about a timing for them to be due, I would think some sort of reasonable amount of time before ORS direct testimony would be due. So we could evaluate whatever those responses are in anticipation of testimony.
Okay. And Mr. Austin and Ms. Mitchell, as I'm going to move to Mr. Hall and to Mr. Pringle. I'm going to come back to you one more time to see if there's anything else that you've thought about. I'm going to move on.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, we're going, Mr. Pringle, if you will let me just speak to Mr. Hall for a second. Mr. Hall and Mr. Edwards, you available?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Jocelyn.
Hi.
It's Roger.
Okay. I was just, I know you haven't intervened yet. Do you have any statements you would like to make?
No, at this time, I mean, I sort of tend to agree with what ORS has said, just that as far as the application moving forward, it seems, you know, it could probably move forward without the documents, but they, to the extent they are available, I think that we would probably want to see them eventually as we move forward in the case.
Thank you. Mr. Pringle, thanks for your patience.
All I wanted is for the applications to get processed. You know, we'll have a discussion, and I've already to some extent discussed it with ORS and with the Department of Consumer Affairs, that these regs were written for companies coming in new and building and constructing service areas. And my client is seeking to serve service areas that have long since been created. As you can see in the application, I maintain that it would not, and we can cross this bridge when we come to it later on, but that it will not add a bit of clarity to this application or whether it should be granted by looking at the engineering plans that were used to construct the systems however many years ago. But maybe they will. We can certainly go run the, search in the deep recesses of DHEC to see what they have. But part of the main reason was to just get the application process, but also to at least acknowledge that unlike a situation where someone is coming in, by the way, you see the requirement for articles of incorporation or partnership agreement. We provided that, but that is very obviously would only have applicability to an entity that had never appeared at the commission before. And we're an existing utility. And these systems have MPDES permits already. And those are referenced in the application. So, I guess in thinking about when, those documents might be filed with the application, I still would like the opportunity to explore with ORS and with the Department of Consumer Affairs and ultimately with the commission about whether those shed any light on the issues in this case. But we can go, look for them and see whether or not a construction permit that was issued in 1974 or something like that has some relevance in this case. But it might, and again, it is in the rule. I'm not gainsaying that by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm trying to make the point that in some circumstances, meaning in this one being one of them, that those particular categories, may not apply in all instances, and it may not have been when this reg was written that it contemplated that somebody would be coming in and operating a system that had already gone through this process. But I don't want to necessarily run that argument all the way down. But all we were trying to do is to get the application processed, and we can revisit that issue. And we're already deep into discovery with ORS on both of these cases, and just want them to move forward as expeditiously as possible.
Okay. Mr. Pringle, may I ask this question?
Sure.
So Mr. Austin earlier alluded to suggested that I should ask you, what date do you think, can you give me a date range when you feel your applicant can, if the commission says, okay, staff, process this, issue the notice, when do you think that you could let the commission know whether you can find the engineering plans?
The construction permit.
Yeah.
What about the statement by the professional engineer and the letter approving the system for operation? All those things, it's possible they're all in a DHEC file somewhere. Mm-hmm. I'll send a FOIA to DHEC today about it, but that doesn't mean that there's any, guarantee that we get something or see something or get any or all of it. So, mm-hmm. I'll undertake to do it with, as much speed as possible, subject to what what DHEC has and where it is and how many different permit numbers / names that I've got to go under. But I can't necessarily make I can report back to the commission and to the parties within a certain amount of time for sure. I could do that every couple of weeks or so, if that made sense. Subject to continuing to have this discussion with the other parties about what we would expect to learn from getting those things and seeing what they say.
All right. So let me just let you know, because I don't know what the commissioners how they will rule on. We don't even have included on the matter on the agenda for this week your request for waiver of hearing. So
it doesn't need to be. I wouldn't expect it to be.
Okay.
That's one that just falls into. And you see, understand too that what I'm doing there is like the reg says filing of a performance bond. I know that we've already got one on file, but that's what it says. And so, trying to figure out exactly how to, either ask for it or make reference to it is a little bit, but no, I wouldn't expect the commission to rule on a request for a hearing waiver.
Okay.
Um,
I was getting ready to
so-
go in another direction, Mr. Pringle.
no,
Okay. So,
okay.
so what my reason for mentioning the hearing is staff
Mhm.
has penciled in on the commissioner's calendars because we have, including these two cases now, 4 rate cases that are pending with the commission
Mhm.
with 6-month deadlines. And so staff had already penciled in on its internal calendar, June 18th and 19th. So typically, I think based on our pre-filed testimony schedules, we would be looking at, if I count back 5 weeks from the 18th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's around May the 14th. And I know ORS, Mr. Austin said that perhaps ORS would want a response regarding your further due diligence regarding locating these documents to be filed with the commission and on them before ORS files its direct testimony. I'll make worst case scenario, say the applicant's testimony is due May 7th. That means ORS's direct testimony would be due around May 21st. So that's when I say a date range. Yeah, that
well,
was my.
we can certainly, I will undoubtedly know by well before that time frame whether or not those documents exist, whether I can get them and I can provide them. I mean, because today is what, March the 4th?
Today's March the 4th, and let's see, 4 weeks from today is April Fool's Day. So you don't want to, and I'm going to go back to Mr. Austin too. We're talking hypothetically right now. So you're conducting some more due diligence, Mr. Pringle, and do you think a deadline of filing the results of your due diligence regarding any more documentation you can acquire, do you think you could file that by April 1st, the 2nd, 3rd?
Sure. Just say the first, and subject to, if for some, I will file something, either it's documents or notice or the results of my findings or due diligence or searching, by that date.
Okay. All right. I'll come back to you once again. You'll have the last word, Mr. Pringle. Mr. Austin.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Austin, what do you think? You're not beholden to this. What do you think about that range for Mr. Pringle to do some more research to determine whether, what he can find out about or information that he can locate regarding, let's say, the copy of engineering plans, the construction permit, the capacity of the system, those waivers? Is April 1st a good day, you think, for ORS to receive that information, whatever else he finds?
I think that's probably a reasonable amount of time. And I will say, as Mr. Pringle's already alluded to, we have served pretty extensive discovery on him, and some of that contemplates some of this as well. So
Okay.
It may be that we could get some answer on that ahead of time. But I think April 1st is reasonable, especially if he has to do a FOIA request.
Okay. All right. Mr. Austin, do you have anything else you want to add right now?
No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much. Mr. Hall?
To me.
Mr. Hall, did you
sorry.
say? Oh, no problem.
May not have been unmuted in time. That all sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Pringle?
Yeah. What else is there?
I don't know.
Go looking for it again. I know, I guess we've already had a rulemaking or something recently about this, or the rules in general. I am, and this would be, certainly on me to some extent to try to, if and when, or to the extent that these types of matters come before the commission and working with the ORS and the Department of Consumer Affairs to try to streamline them or see where, what is really important for the type of application that's coming before the commission. And I appreciate that the commission staff and, looking at these and, trying to decide, does everything, is everything in there? But I just, this is obviously a dynamic process. I mean, I of course, learning that, or that these are, subject to the 58.4.240, framework, which, again, was, and that's not on anybody else but me, but that was now, the process that was being followed. So this is all a work in progress, and see if we can't, figure out a way to, to be as clear and as complete as we need to be, but not more than perhaps we need to be. But we'll keep working on it, and I'll go see what I can find from DHEC.
Okay. So I want to ask my colleagues if there's anything else. I did want you to, Mr. Pringle and other parties, to know that once the commission makes its decision on Thursday, we'll issue the notice shortly thereafter. If it's not on Thursday, it will definitely be Friday.
Okay.
But I need you to please recognize that, okay?
Sure.
All right. Hold on one second. Let me see if my colleagues have anything. Okay. My colleague said nothing else today. So,
Okay.
Mr. Pringle, Mr. Edwards, Mr. Hall. Why did I say Mr. Edwards? That's not right. Jack, yeah. Mr. Pringle is by himself. Then we have Mr. Hall and Mr. Edwards, and then Ms. Mitchell and Ms. Austin. Thank you so much for participating today. And I hope you have a great day. And we'll see you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.